What do I know? Welcome, everyone. We'll be getting started in just a minute.
Oh, I'm from New Jersey too. I love when I get to see another Jersey friend.
We do have people from all across the country. That's
We
awesome.
do.
We
Love
do,
it.
from New York to California. We've got folks. All right, we'll be getting started in about 23 seconds.
About 23 seconds.
Yeah, not to put too fine a point on it.
Yeah.
80%. Wow.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to do some research.
All right, everyone, we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. We are so glad that each and every one of you is here today. And welcome to our webinar session on Present with Excellence at COABE 2025. And if you have not yet already, we have several people that have. Please introduce yourself in the chat. And we've had several folks that have shared an interesting tidbit about their location, which you can do if you would like to, because we already know that Poteet, Texas is the strawberry capital of the US. And so thanks for sharing that. But if you please introduce yourself in the chat. So we're getting people from all over New York to California and places in between. So I'm delighted to introduce you to our, I guess we could say panel or presenter group today. And I'm thrilled to be working with two outstanding colleagues that I'm always thrilled to work with anytime. And they will tell a little bit more about themselves as they go through, but I'm thrilled to work with Kim Glenn and also Sarah Goldammer today. And we will each be doing a segment of today's presentation. So I will ask each of them if they would just briefly introduce themselves when the time comes for them to do their presentation. But once again, want to issue a very warm welcome to each and every one who is here today on our webinar. And first of all, the big thing we want to say is thank you for being a COABE presenter. You are the lifeblood of the conference. The conference could not take place without you. So if you take nothing else away today, take away a warm thank you for being part of the COABE conference and for being a presenter. Thank you. So I'll ask Sarah, please, if we'd go to the next slide. And our objectives are for today. By the end of the session, we'll be able to explain how to prepare for an effective session. We will also describe how to drive participant engagement, and we'll see a great example of that. We'll also have a chance to reflect on some best practice presentation elements, and you'll certainly be able to access some resources that will help as you plan your presentation. So that is our mission for today. All right, so let's see here if we can launch our first poll. So let's see, here we go. Our poll is launched. So the question is, how many times have I presented at the COABE conference? And we have the choices, as you can see. First time presenter, welcome if you're a first time presenter. Presented 2 to 5 times. No less of a welcome for you. And for our veterans who presented maybe 6 or more times, we welcome you as well. And I'm probably not shocked to see a lesser percentage for that. We'll give another few seconds to get that. Right now, first-time presenters seem to be having the lead with roughly about 2/3 first-time presenters, and then 1/3 presented 2 to 5. And a few people that have presented 6 or more times is about 5% right now. So let's see, I think we're going to go ahead and end that poll because I don't see any activity there. And we can see the results here where first-time presenters, 68%, 2 to 5 times, 27%. And our veteran presenters, thank you for presenting 6 or more times, 5%. Thank you for doing the poll. Of course, polls are one of many ways that we can drive engagement as we do our presentation. So you will have that capability because if you're presenting hybrid or fully face-to-face, you will have that functionality in the Hoover app to be able to do polls. So one way in which we can drive engagement. Okay, so let's go to our next slide, please. So I'm delighted to turn things over to Kim Glenn. And Kim, if you wanted to give, please, a brief introduction. And thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Steve. Always happy to be here. My name is Kim. I am the Managing Director of Innovative Learning Solutions at an organization called EDSI. I am also a board member of AALPD, the Association of Adult Literacy Professional Developers, and so is Sarah. You're a vice chair, right? Sarah's our vice chair. And we are an organization that focuses on providing professional development for professional developers. And so we're super delighted to partner with COABE on this initiative. So Sarah, let's go to the next slide because I'm talking about planning. And so over the years, I've been presenting at COABE for over a decade, usually multiple sessions each year. And the one thing that I noticed, I can tell when somebody planned their session. I can tell when it's intentional and they thought about all of the little details and what they wanted me to leave with. And they were very good at how they walked us through the content. And so when you're preparing your presentation, if you've already done it, you can go back and look to make sure you've done these things. And if you haven't started yet, probably should start planning. So you want to ask yourself, what are those key takeaways? What are the knowledge, the skills, or the attitudes that participants should gain while they're with you? So you're not talking at people, you are engaging with them. And when they leave, they should be able to do something. And so what is that, right? How will this session impact the participants' practices? So how is it going to benefit them? And one of the things that I always say when I think about kind of this planning piece is everyone is tuned into the radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me? And we need to be thinking about that from the beginning. And so when we think about the end, how do you want to feel when you leave a workshop? You want to feel like you can do something, you can implement what you learned. So you have to plan for that by beginning with the end in mind. So Sarah, let's go to our next slide. And to help you with that, we have a beautiful planning document. So we can probably drop a link to that in the chat. But this planning document we put together for you. And what this does is it helps you think through the different elements you should be thinking through when you are planning your presentation. So you always want to identify those desired outcomes. And then if you want somebody to learn how to do something, how do you know that they learned how to do it? Are you including some way for them to assess whether or not they gain the knowledge and skills that you are hoping? So what are those engagement strategies? What indicators will you be looking for to help you understand whether or not somebody is actually getting it? And then how are you going to facilitate that learning, right? So that we can hook the audience at the beginning and we can present ideas and pull them through in a logical manner. And then at the end, everyone leaves really excited because we can do something. The other thing that you need to be thinking about as you're planning your presentation, aside from content, which we're going to get a little bit more into in a moment, is really the logistics and the logistics piece. So we did a coffee break on hybrid presenting. And so if you haven't seen that, you could go and take a look at that. That gives a lot of really great logistics information if you are doing a hybrid presentation. But in general, really think about what are you going to need? Are you presenting a PowerPoint? Do you want to do handouts? How many? Do you want to try to keep everything digital? What are you planning on using? And what setup is required? So if you're hybrid, you know you're going to have to be on a microphone the whole time. Otherwise, your virtual audience can't hear you. You need to design with that in mind. So if you are doing fully in person, you can think about that. But if you are doing hybrid, definitely think about what that experience is going to be like for that virtual participant as well. You're not just planning for the in-person participant. So really think about those logistics. And how are you going to stay on track? You have 70 minutes. How are you going to make sure that you get through all of your content in that timely manner? Because we all hate when we run out of time at the end and we didn't get to some of the stuff we wanted to get to. So how are you going to make sure you stay on track? And you have to be thinking about this as you navigate through. So use the planning document as a guide. And I want to talk a little bit more about some content planning. So Sarah, let's click ahead. And one of the things, if you are on my team, you will know that I am very big on learning objectives. So learning objectives are not what I am going to do as the facilitator. They are not the agenda. They are what the participants will be able to do at the end of the workshop. So they're usually action-based, verb-based, and they're usually with some sort of evidence. So can they explain how to? Can they describe the process of? Do they know how to access resources to? Can they write something, write a lesson plan, design an activity, whatever it is, we want them to be able to do something when they leave. So those learning objectives are really the framework for your presentation. And they give you kind of the guide in kind of what you should be building. So with those learning objectives, if we can pop over to the next slide, once you have those learning objectives, then you start plugging your content in. So for each learning objective, what content is necessary for me to deliver? What activity is necessary for them to be able to demonstrate that they have achieved the objective? And all of that is tied directly to that objective. So one of the things that I always say to my team is, if you have a slide and you can't connect it to the objective, why is it there? What is the purpose? If you have content tied to an objective, but not a way to assess whether the participant has achieved the objective, are we really putting together a quality workshop? And so what we're looking at doing with making sure that we have good objectives with content aligned to it, with activities and engagement and ways to assess, we're really making sure that we have a structured and cohesive experience that will help you stay on time. The more you plan, the better you're going to be able to stay on time. And so on the next slide, what I'm going to talk a little bit about is when you're building those slides and you are building out that content, we all hate when we walk in and there's just a slide of words. Probably one of the things that I sometimes, sorry, I shouldn't admit it, I will sometimes like see it and walk out. You're going to give me that much information on a slide. There's no way I'm going to be able to process that information within this 70-minute window. So no one wants to be bombarded by too much information. So I always say, how does this information help me achieve the overall learning objective? If it doesn't, maybe it's just a good resource or a handout for later. We don't necessarily have to teach everything or go over everything in this 70-minute workshop. And then how does this slide, this example, this story, even the picture you're choosing to use on a slide relate to helping the learner, your participants, understand? So you shouldn't have random pictures or random graphs or random stories that don't connect to your topic. So every single thing you do, from every word you say to the words you put on the slide, to images you select, to the activities, should all be intentional and have a really clear purpose as we move forward. And so let's take a look at the next slide as an example. Is this an effective slide? And I'm assuming that y'all are gonna tell me no, I hope, right? But you don't want to have all these bullet points. I look at it and my eyes just glaze over. Too many images and charts. They're small, I can't read them, so they don't add any value. And there's too many different kind of things going on. And so when you look at this slide, what is your initial instinct? Drop it in the chat. I'm really curious. Cognitive overload. Yeah. So when you see something like this, even if you just imagine the slide just being all those bullet points or the slide being all those images, how does it make you feel? It's visually too busy, right? You just see colors. So we're taking away the emphasis, and we want the emphasis to be on the content and the purpose of the slide. And so on our next slide, I just want to emphasize that for each and every slide that you design, what is the one thing you want your participants to focus on that slide, and why is that slide important? Why am I using this slide, and what am I hoping my participants can get out of that particular slide? And so I always ask my team, I'm like, why is this slide here? And if they can't clearly be like, oh, well, it ties back to this, this, and this, or it's going to lead into this, I go, well, what's the purpose? Maybe it should be a resource, and maybe it doesn't belong in the presentation. So that is a really great tip as you move through. Why is this slide here? What am I trying to get across? What is the main point I'm trying to achieve out of this slide? So that way we avoid cognitive overload. And then on our next slide, what we're going to do is move over to Sarah, because Sarah's going to talk to us about engagement. And I told you to plan, but now you're going to get to see kind of what that feels like along the way.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Steve. I love presenting with these two folks. They're trusted colleagues and a lot of fun. And so let me do a quick introduction and then I'll get started. I was going to just get started because I was so excited about the topic of engagement. But my name is Sarah Goldammer. I'm from Illinois, and I'm the director of the Southern Illinois Professional Development Center. We're part of our professional development network in Illinois. We work under the direction of our Illinois Community College Board. I, like some of you, wandered into adult education. I am almost to the day on Saturday. It will be 24 years that since I wandered into adult education, and I was home. I love it. I love the people. I love all of your hearts, and I can already see it in some of the things that you're putting in the chat. And I do want to call out today that one of my colleagues, another trusted colleague, friend, is here, and her name is Tara Schwab, and she is my tech buddy today. And so that's why I want to call her out, because she's going to be doing a couple of things to support me, which is fantastic, because, you know, it's good to have a security blanket because you just feel capable. Okay, so we'll get back to that in just a minute, but let's start with poll number 2. As Steve mentioned, that's a good way to engage us. And yeah, thank you for putting that in the chat. So where are you with your COABE presentation? Kim, you know, she's such a good planner. I've watched her for years. She's so good at it. So I'm pretty sure that she's probably mostly ready. But what about the rest of you? Do you have a long way to go? Are you about halfway through? Or you have it mostly ready? Any of those are perfectly acceptable answers. No shame. It's all good. We're still almost a month out, and we're going to be sharing a lot of information. So, Steve, how's it going? Are we almost at 100%? Is everybody fully engaged in answering the poll?
I think we are very close. I still see a little movement. I'm going to give it just another, yeah,
Give it
we
another
still have a
minute
little bit.
because, yeah, because, you know, as educators, we love that 100%. We are driven to get that 100%. So,
All right, I don't see any movements. I'm going to go ahead and end the
okay.
poll, and we will share the results. Looks like kind of almost like one third, one third,
Yeah.
one third are pretty darn close with still have a long way to go, and the halfway and mostly ready, almost evenly matched, but have a long way to go. Looks like it's leading the field. And I loved, Sarah, your non-stressed reaction to that, because there still is time.
There is. And I'm going to say that the planning that Kim already talked about, you're going to see a lot of overlap to engagement, because you're going to feel comfortable in engaging whenever you've made a plan. So I'm going to repeat some of the things that Kim said and hopefully kind of contextualize it in engaging. And so first, let's start with, how are you feeling about your presentation? We already asked where you are, but how are you feeling about it? Are you feeling a little stressed today? Are you feeling comfortable? What are you thinking? Put it in the chat. Let's see how you're doing. Nobody's putting anything in yet, but I'm not stressed about that. I'm just going to give it a little bit of wait time. Comfortable. The hybrid part is stressing me out. Okay, Catherine, I hear you. Somebody's nervous, excited, pretty good, a little stressed. Okay. Thank you first of all, thanks for engaging and putting something in the chat. I do appreciate that. And, several of you are putting in the dynamics of the hybrid. And so I really do encourage you. Steve put a couple of links in the chat, and Kim called out the coffee break where we talked about hybrid presenting. So that gives you some resources. But, one of the things about any presenting is, number one, that good planning, and then practice. Practice, that there's no substitute for that. So here's what I want you to start with, though. I want you to take a deep breath, okay, and let it out. And it's all good. And why is it all good? Because I'm going to start you out with a thought about engagement. We are so fortunate that you are coming to present at COABE. Steve already told you thanks. And I'm going to tell you thank also, because I want you to start today in any planning that you're doing from now going forward, all the practice you're doing. If you're doing that hybrid presenting, you have signed up to speak to a larger audience because you have two audiences, and we salute you for doing that, because you have the power to inspire, to inform, and we hope that you are inspired by that thought, that you have that power, and that when you're getting stressed or thinking, wow, this is a lot of work, and yeah, it is some work to put together a quality presentation, but you have that power, and it's really important. Kim talked about a picture needs to make sense. So here's my picture for you. You can light that fire. You can spark that energy, your stories, your words, your images, and the way that you make your attendees feel about themselves, or about their students, about their programs, about their everything that they have to offer can have this ripple effect, and it's going to really make a difference. Start with that thought as you think about your presentation, and start by reminding yourself that our adult education field really needs inspiring presentations. We need good content. We need you to share what you have. That's why we need you to make sure that you take the time to have a session that is presented with excellence. We want to make sure, Kim talked about a call to action, and I have that written down several times in my notes also. It's more than just sharing information. Information is important, but people can read a report. What they need is you need to give them that call to action. So as you're putting your session together, really go back and think, am I having something that I'm asking them to do? Something that they, something that they feel passionate about also as well. So we have a couple of questions to frame your thoughts. And if you feel so compelled, I would love to have you put the answer in the chat. And if you just want to think about it, that's okay. But I encourage you to really think about these answers, because it will help you to guide everything that you're doing, and it'll help you to engage in your presentations. I want to present at COABE because, especially for you folks that are first time, why did you decide to submit a proposal? Why are you doing this extra work? Why do you want to present? For those of you who are long timers, why do you keep doing it? Like I said, if any of you want to put that in the chat, I'd love it. For me personally, I love the aha moment. I love whenever I see somebody's light bulb go on. And what I've found over the years is I always take away something from my participants as well. And so if you engage and allow people to share information, then you will get that back as well. The next question, or the sentence starter, is I want my participants to walk away with, what do you want them to have? Yeah, and Sonia, thank you for saying you want to present at COABE to give back, to share and connect with adult education professionals. Love those reasons. Thank you. And you have something to say that is different and hopefully helpful to other teachers. Love that, Carly. That's awesome. Okay. So what do you want your participants to walk away with? Not walk away from. What do you want them to walk away with? To learn something new that they can apply right away. That's awesome. Okay. And feeling of empowerment. I love that one, Irene. Yes. That is part of that call to action also, is, empowering them. Here's information. Now, what are you going to do with it? and that to help our students through, whoa, lots of good ones coming in. Awesome. Help our students through information, participants to have resources, they can adapt to their audience, present their state and regional, and they love to, wow, that's going fast now, love presenting and sharing thoughts. I can tell that this group is going to do some great things because they're excited. If you're excited, then your attendees are probably going to be excited. I can tell you with almost complete certainty that if you're not excited about your topic, they're not going to be. That's just the way it is. And yeah, we want participants to walk away with inspiration ideas. Awesome. So the last one on here is I want to affect change in the following way. You know, Kim talked about like, what are people going to walk away with? What's the change that's going to happen from your presentation? Walk away with new inspiration, ideas. And Mandy's going to talk about the lesson, the struggles for others while we face starting new programs. That's awesome. Okay, so here's the thing, you guys. A couple of things to keep in mind. Knowing your why will really motivate you and it will drive you. So that's really important. Your attendees also need to know their why. So we'll kind of talk about that a little bit. And that's part of engagement because, you know, Kim talked about walking in a room and there's too much information on the slide. Have you ever been in a session and you're about halfway through and thinking, ugh, I'm not sure if this was really for me? We don't want that. We want people to go, oh my goodness, there is so much great content here. Yes, so knowing your why to motivate you. Being clear about what you want your participants to walk away with. Kim talked about that also, but I'm going to drill down a little bit more. It's making sure that they understand that content applies to them. And the only way that we can do that is making sure that we draw that line between A and B. Here's what I think I want to know about, and here's what we're talking about. Sometimes people don't draw that line unless we draw it for them. So that's why we want to engage. We want to get feedback from them about how things are going and that type of thing. Okay, let's see what else we have. Find your strengths and where you can monopolize on those strengths. That's awesome. That's great advice. The last thing I'm going to say before I move on is all of us need time to process. Some people need more time to process. So one of the things I love to do is to bring up some questions and maybe get some immediate answers, but then say, hey, we're going to come back to this later on. You guys keep thinking about that. Keep processing, and we're going to come back to it because now you've told them, number one, there's going to be an action time pretty soon, and they're going to be called upon again. And so for those that maybe are like, oh, have you ever gotten to like, here's a conversation and they moved on, and 2 minutes later, you're like, oh, wait, I wanted to say, well, that's okay. We're going to come back to it. So I love always setting up for the future and saying, we're going to come back to this. So we'll be modeling that today. So what's your goal? Kim talked about what the objectives are and what you want to get out of this, but what do you want to gain from this presentation? And in a 30-something minutes, when this is over and you walk away, are you going to say, I got what I needed? What would that be? What does that look like for you? What is success for you that you got to what you wanted? So again, you don't have to put it in the chat, but I do want you to clarify for yourself because there's a couple of things going on when you're thinking about what you want. Number one, you're telling your brain, there's information here that I need to get, so I need to pay attention. And that's really important, especially at a conference where people go to multiple sessions. And so they might get a little tired, they might get a little fatigued. So you want to make sure when they come to your session, they're really thinking about that. Also, if they tell you, hey, I really want this, again, if it's way outside of what you were going to talk about, I'm not saying you should change, you should stay the course, but you can either suggest to them, say, oh, you know what, that's great, that's not going to be covered now, but I can suggest a resource for you or a reference for you. Or if they say something that's maybe just a little bit outside, you can make a note, and then when you get to something, say, you know, that sort of connects to what you said about that you wanted to get. So then that gives you, makes that connection. The last two things on this slide, I just want to call out, is there anybody here who's a Universal Design for Learning, UDL enthusiast? Yay. Okay. Kim is. I know Tara is. My tech buddy is, because we talk about it all the time. Like there's not a day that goes by without it. If you are, I'd love for you to just put UDL in the chat, because then, you know, that'll make me feel empowered. But yeah, thanks, Tara. Thanks. I do keep my laminated copy of the UDL guidelines with me all the time. Sometimes I eat my breakfast cereal off of those, use it as a placemat, because then that reminds me of UDL. The two at the bottom are directly from the new 3.0 guidelines: welcome interests and identities, and nurture joy and play. I think that's really important, because what I just said about asking them what their goal is, that's welcoming their interests and identities. That's wanting to know what success is going to be like for that. And also it gives you the chance to nurture joy and play. That doesn't mean you have to be yucking it up. You don't have to be doing improv. But one of the things I love to do is I love, or in person, to throw out some push balls. If somebody's doing good work, just acknowledge it. Something that shows that there's energy in the room. And for those in-person people, you want to make sure that when they come in the room, they're welcomed. Say, hey, thanks, come on in, come on down and sit down. If you have if you're nervous and you're thinking, man, Sarah, I got to think about all this stuff, I don't know about like warming up the room, or maybe that's just not really in your wheelhouse. That's okay. But bring somebody in that can kind of help you with that. Bring a trusted colleague in that can share. And thank you. I love Steve. This is awesome. He's already putting the UDL guidelines in there. That's a fantastic. That's why you have to have these nice partners helping you out. But, you know, making sure that the room is warmed up, making sure that people feel welcome and they feel good about learning again. All right. So we're going to think workshop. If you're thinking about, and I want you to think back to a positive experience, learning experience that you've had, like at a conference. Was it more of a workshop, or was it more of a presentation? And what do you think is the difference between a workshop and a presentation? Anybody want to take that one on? Okay, Steve's saying presentation talked at, workshop I participated was empowered. Okay, and Laura's saying interactive. A workshop is interactive. Workshop is hands-on. Thank you, Carly. Hands-on versus listening. Yes. So all that hands-on, it's interactive, collaboration, come away with some product or some idea or something like that. So we really want to encourage you to go that workshop route. In addition to sharing information, give them time to think about how they're going to use the information. How are they going to apply that? And that's part of that engagement piece. And if you're sitting there now and you're thinking, man, I have so much content, I do not have time to do this other part. Here's what I'm going to really strongly suggest to you is you probably need to narrow down your focus. There is no way that somebody's going to come in for an hour or 70 minutes, whatever that they're just not going to be able to get to your level, your knowledge level in that short period of time. So thinking about, okay, here are my objectives and what's the most important thing that I want them to take away? Really think about that and drill down to that and make sure that you focus on time to make sure that they get at least that one takeaway. And also time to ask questions, and time to process. So here's a little trick of the trade. I'm going to throw it out. This is something that I love to do every so often, to just stop as you're talking and say, do you see how you might apply or use what I've shared? I also love to do, and I've done this for years, I did this long before we had hybrid, and then once we had hybrid, I just added it in, is especially if you're talking for a while and you're looking out and like people kind of got that glazed look, is say, okay, guys, let's just stop for a minute. We're going to take 1 minute, turn to the person next to you and tell them something that you're going to do with what you've just learned here today. Okay, give an action item. Or if it's 2:30 in the afternoon and they had a big lunch, then yes, read the audience. Exactly, Irene. Then get them to move around and find somebody. Now, if you're hybrid, you can still do that. You can do it in the room, but then you can ask the people out there to put something in the chat. Have them reflect. It doesn't have to be a long engagement process, but stop and have them reflect. And then, like I said, I love this question. How are you going to apply this? Because what's going to happen when you ask that question a couple of things are going to happen. If you're really having a good day, somebody's going to say something super fantastic, and everybody in the room's going to go, that's amazing. And they have just modeled a way that they're going to apply it. They've just added on to the learning that you are giving out to people. And you've allowed a chance for a different voice than yours to speak for a minute, which also helps the brain to shift and go, oh, I got to pay attention. Wait, somebody else is talking. So all of that is going on. And I know you're sitting there going, yeah, but Sarah, what if it's not a super good day? And what if nobody says anything? And that question just hangs there. And I will just say that there's a lot of different things you can do. One is you can just say, oh, no worries. We are going to get to things. So be thinking about how you can apply, because now it might be a call to action that wasn't there before, and now it is. This is another reason why it's good to have a tech buddy or a colleague, because if, it's been a while, then they could raise their hand and say something. Okay. Steve, is there a question that I should stop and ask? I'm kind of seeing some things go by, but I'm not sure.
There is a question. Anne Eads had a question, and I'll be happy to unmute you, Anne, if you wanted to ask that question. So just go ahead and, yeah, there we go.
I did not. I had a technical problem, so I apologize. But I'm thoroughly enjoying this and gaining so much. Thank you very much. I did not have a question today. Not yet. Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. There you go.
Not yet.
You guys, Anne's from my state, and she's a fabulous teacher and coordinator, and she has great. So she's going to have a question later. I know that. So anyway, thank you, Anne. Thanks for coming, and thanks for presenting at COABE. I really appreciate it. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I think I have time. Yep. And Kim talked about like not finishing on time, so I'm a little bit concerned. I better go on. I'll come back to this story later if I have time. Okay. All right. So I've kind of mentioned this, but I'm going to come back to it again. Here's a picture, because when you get ready to start your presentation, I want you, number one, to be thinking about the value of what you're sharing, that we need you to share, that your attendees need to hear from you. You're going to spark that fire. Remember that other picture that I had? And you're going to have a ripple effect. You are going to inspire a teacher who's going to go back and inspire his or her students. So, it's awesome. And I want you to think about that. So thinking about that passion, the energy, and then your attendees will catch your enthusiasm. The next thing I have written down is make sure you share your personal stories, both your success and challenges. Pictures, people remember pictures, and people remember stories. So a lot of heavy content, they can go back and refer to it. You maybe want to have a handout, but make sure that you have that story for them. And so the story that I was going to share, I am going to share it now. One of the most powerful things that I ever experienced as a young professional, have any of you read any of Stephen Covey's books, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? I saw Stephen Covey in person as a 20-something young professional at a table full of older professionals in my organization, including the owner of the company. And Stephen Covey said, there's 12 of you at a table. Each of you number off your parts of a clock. And so at any point, I can stop speaking and say, hey, 6 o'clock, tell your table, reteach your table what I just shared with you. Whoa, you think I was engaged? You better believe I was engaged, because at any point I thought that they could stop. And so I'm not saying we maybe necessarily can do that, but let people know at any point they're going to be, called upon to reflect what they do know and how they're going to use what they want. Okay. So make sure we set the stage for success, use some stories. I'm going to tell you also, Tara and I are doing a presentation together, and we're starting off with a story. And I'll tell you real quickly, because I think this is going to grab people's engagement. It's on UDL. And because we're professional developers, we have a series of trainings. And we have a teacher, well, we've had a lot of teachers who've given us feedback, but this particular one is a powerful story. And she said, and I'm just going to give you the cliff notes now. You got to come to my presentation if you want to hear the whole story. But she said, hey, I was doing this. I came to your training and learned this. I did this different in class, and now my students can do this, which they couldn't before. Powerful stuff. So we are going to start with a story, and we're hopefully going to have people go, oh, that's awesome. I need to interact with this material in that same way. All right. So how will learners engage with the content? We've already talked about the learners need time to interact and to process information. That's where the learning takes place, is with the processing. So if you're providing some research, stop and ask them, how will this impact you? What would you do with this research? What do you glean from this research? That's really powerful stuff to make them think about it. If it's classroom content, give them time to say, wait, now how am I going to take this and how am I going to apply this in my classroom? Again, if you think you don't have time for engagement, then you probably have too much material, and maybe you need to think about that. Okay. All right. So we should try it out, right? We have a few minutes and we're going to try out an engagement activity. So here are this is what I thought about for you all. And you do have a doc that's coming that has notes on it. Okay. So that's coming for you. And we're going to try a little engagement activity. My engagement activity today is just a simple Google Doc. Now, there's a lot of really cool engagement platforms out there, and I would encourage you to check them out. If there's something that you love, try it. The reason I'm going with this one is there's a couple of things. I don't want to waste a lot of time training people how to use an engagement piece. And most people already know how to do a Google Doc. That's how I decided. So it's not super pretty. It's basic. I also want to make sure that participants get to choose what is valuable to them. So each of you are going to get to choose what you want to go interact with. The other thing that's fantastic about an interactive, some type of platform or document, is participants can learn from each other. You get to see what other people are doing. You want to make sure that it's accessible to both in-person and virtual attendees. So I'm going to show you that in just a minute for those hybrid presenters. That will give you an idea of how to do that. And give people a way to participate without a shared doc. So here's a screenshot, because I'm not going to put the link in the chat yet. Actually, Tara's going to do it for me because she's my tech buddy and I don't have to worry about it. Because I know if I give you that, you're going to go to it. And I want to tell you a few things about this first. First of all, like I said, it's not super pretty. It's just a Google Doc, but you can go to the different areas. You can say, remember, I told you we were going to ask this again. I want my participants to walk away with. I want to affect change in the following way. I can share a story about the time. And then also one question that you still have. And then at the very bottom is the guiding notes for engagement. So here's the thing. Don't do something for the first time at a national conference, okay? I made this doc. I had my colleagues come on. We played with it. We tried it out. We made sure it was working right. So make sure you try something out before that. We also seeded it with some answers. We put some answers on before because we thought that people would be more engaged if they saw some material there already. I mentioned about having a way to interact without that. So like if I was doing this, if it was in-person people, then Tara, as my tech buddy, would take what they said in the room and put it on the doc. Or if they wanted to put it in the chat, she can put it on the doc. Hopefully you want to engage, but if you, for whatever reason, you can't, then, you know, that's fine. Let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide, because here's an option. You can either use the QR code and pull it up. Tara's going to put 2 links in the chat. Why are there 2 links? Well, one of the things you need to know about Google Docs is it has a limit of 50 participants. And we have more than 50 participants today. So if you can't get in one doc, just go to the other one. And so if you have too many participants, that's a really good problem to have. So let's say that first, that's good. And second of all, we want to just say, let's build community, right? So let's all take turns. You may want to, and let's go to one of the docs. I'm going to actually pull it up. If you jump on here, maybe don't take the first line, just take a line. If somebody's in a line, move to another line. So I am going to pull this up and just see. I want to, let's go to the, I'm sorry, I'm scrolling. Okay, Steve's already in there. Look how what a good participant he is. He's saying, I want my participants to walk away with increased confidence for doing an effective presentation. I actually put in there yesterday, I want my participants to walk away with one resource they can use right away. A solid foundation of the why behind the strategies. And you can see when you bring up a document, if you have a document like this, you'll want to bring it up on your screen because your in-person attendees, that's probably the only way. They might pull it up on their phone, but they want to make sure that they get to participate. So you want to make sure to bring that up and use it as sharing. And let's click over to,
Sarah, can I pop in with a tip?
please do, yes.
So I love using QR codes to bring people to technology. And one of the best practices that I've learned over the years is when you have just the QR code on the projector up at the front of the room, everyone stands up and they're trying to do it with their phone and they're walking up and they're walking back. One of the things that I started to do is if I'm using a QR code is I print it out. So sometimes I'll just leave a bunch of copies on the seats, or I'll have a resource guide that has it in it. And that way we're not wasting time waiting for everyone to come up and try and get the scan together. So I love using them, but that's just the tip from me.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. And yeah, we've got to figure out both worlds, the in-person and the hybrid. So that's a great suggestion. You guys, we are getting such fantastic stuff on this document. Thank you so much for sharing. And so this is what we're going to do. You can keep putting things in there. I am going to go back and check to see what your questions are, and I'm not going to address them all now because it's 2:46, or in my time, it's 2:46. So we're going to go back and unpack a little bit. And then if you have a question on there, one of us promises to go on and put the answer on so you can go back and look at it. And if you want to go put more things on later, feel free, because that's one of the great things about a sharing doc is that you can continue to go back and reference it and get more information. So you all had got some ideas from us, but then you're also getting it from each other whenever, like, what are some of their tips of what they're going to do and what they're going to share. All right. So I need to bring this home. I'm sorry, I get a little excited about engagement. So let's just kind of chat for a minute. How did we encourage engagement in the last, I don't know, well, really, Kim encouraged engagement in her piece as well. So let's point out some ways that we encourage engagement. What did you see that, kind of stuck in your mind? Multiple ways to get to the doc. I could use the QR code or click the link. Polls, right? Very good. What else was engaging? Polls, shared doc, encouragement to engage. Yeah, we called it out. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I need you to be a part of this because you're going to get more from it. Let people know that. Again, the QR code. Links worked. Thank you for that, Christine. Yes, check those links. So yeah. Yes, made me more confident to participate, ask for feedback in the chat, acknowledging participation. Yes, we all like that. So that's awesome. So what motivated you to participate? That's kind of, you might have already kind of answered some of those in the chat. So if you don't want to answer that one, or if it's already there, and choices and connections to how we use the information, experience to improve, invested in the topic. Yes, we got on the journey with you. Thank you, Shannon. I love it. So think for a minute now. Let's bring it home to you with what you already have planned. How can I adapt what I'm doing? Maybe add a little something in. You've got some great start, but what can you adapt what you're doing to make sure that you get some engagement? And then what are your ideas for engagement? And again, if you don't have the thought right now, that's okay. You can go back and look at the shared doc. You can talk with a colleague. You can try it out. And then as you're practicing it, your colleague can say, hey, what about this? Or what's this question? Creating a learner guide is another great way. Kim already gave you one resource. And if you go and look at either guide 1 or guide 2 of those links that Tara shared in the chat. At the bottom, there are a bunch of ideas for you. There's the notes of what we talked about. And so that is there. And that is, I love when great minds think alike. I mean, I guess I'm just going to say that, call it out and say, I feel like Kim and I both have great up minds. Use a QR code and have some paper copies too. Yes, love to have some type of a paper copy or something that people can take, and also digital, because you never know what people are going to want. So give them everything. And a final thought to consider before I turn it over to my friend Steve: sit and get won't grow dendrites. Marcia Tate, we need to be really interacting with, moving, shaking, and engaging. All right. Thank you everybody for engaging with me. It was fantastic. And now I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everyone for your great participation. We've really got some good things going on in the chat. And speaking of good things going on in the chat, if we hit our next slide, I want to ask you in the chat, if you would please share some of your best presentation tips, maybe just a short sentence or two. And that could start out would be something like, my best tip is, I have found, and I think it's a best practice, that anytime we use a sentence starter in the chat, that really gets better and more participation. So the sentence starter for this would be, my best presentation tip is, or my best tip is, and let that be your starter there. So please go ahead and put those in the chat. Thank you in advance for that. Let's go to the next slide. One thing that's available that you can take advantage of, and I will put a link to this in the chat, is a one-on-one coaching session with me, the COABE presenter coach. We do have a number of times still available. I have done several coaching sessions already and have had some wonderful discussions. And what this is just a session for you and I to talk, and it's not me judging your presentation. It is me asking you questions and getting you to think about, what's my big idea? How am I going to get this? What should I be spending my time in? I am going to listen and ask questions. I am not going to be doing any judging. And this can help you as you plan. This can help you as you put your slideshow together. This can help you once you have everything together to just get another pair of eyes on that. So would love to have you. These sessions are about 30 minutes. They are absolutely free. So several sessions during the month of March. And if we need to add more, we will do some. So let's go to the next, please. COABE office hours will also be happening, and we do this every year. And essentially, these office hours will just be to go through some last minute details, and we'll show you a little bit more about how the Whova app is working and how to navigate through that. And I just put in the chat the links for the office hours, which will be starting March the 7th. Gosh, that's next Friday, and there'll be the next 2 Fridays. We've try to do those at different times, so you can register for those office hours. And that's a good time. It's a very interactive session where you can ask questions and get some good information. So please come and join us during the COABE office hours, and especially that last one. As we get closer to the conference, we'll be able to take you more closely inside the Whova app. And by the way, several folks mentioned, oh, I'm a little nervous about doing the hybrid presentation. I want to encourage you, don't be nervous. You can do this if you've presented on Zoom before, which I think most of us have done so, that it is you really presenting on Zoom. It's just the Zoom that lives inside the Whova app. The interface is very, very similar. So there's really no reason to be frightened. It's just that instead of doing that through Zoom, you're doing that through the Zoom inside Whova. So no stress is necessary. Stress is optional, and you don't need to have the stress. So look forward to seeing you at the office hours. And all of these are the same, so you could just attend one of these. Next slide, please. You may also want to publicize your session on your favorite social media platform, whether that's LinkedIn or X or whatever you would want to choose to use. If you'll go to the link that's inside the chat, the images, you can show those and you can proudly use the I'm presenting image there to let people know that you're going to be presenting. And you can also publicize your session inside the Whova app. If you probably received more than one email from COABE encouraging you to download the Whova app. You probably received 5 or 6 by this point. So please go ahead, and it's an easy process to do. Just make sure, please, and thank you, that you use the same email address that you use to register for the conference, because that will get you in very easily. So go ahead and publicize your session, and you can publicize that as well inside the Whova app. Let's go to the next slide, please. So if you are presenting hybrid, we do strongly recommend that you have a buddy, or in other words, a second person that is able to assist you during your presentation. And that person could have the main responsibility for the online audience while you are working mainly with the face-to-face audience. If you don't have a buddy for whatever reason, you can certainly find one. Maybe a colleague is going, maybe someone from your state is going, maybe you know someone that organizes the strand or the larger topic area that your presentation is in, and maybe that somebody in that strand would be willing to help you out. You can also use the Buddy Finder, which is like a dating app for buddies, to be able to find someone that would help you out. We already have several people who have volunteered to serve as buddies. And again, what you're volunteering for, asking for, is that second person that will help you as you do your session. They can look at the chat and say, hey, we got some great comments from Phyllis here in the chat, and she asked this question, or she said this. So make sure you have that second person, because it is not possible to present well with one person hybrid. It is possible to present an outstanding presentation with that second person. So when we talk about buddy, we're just talking about that hybrid support person. And you can actually watch a great video that Kim Glenn did, and her partner, Jen, at the conference last year, demonstrated how things work well with having a buddy and what the responsibilities of each one was. So I thought we'd lose Kim to Hollywood for sure, but I'm so glad that we didn't. I'm so glad that she is still working in adult ed. Let's go to the next slide, please. There are many presenter resources that provide more information on the presenter page, and they're always being updated as well. So don't hesitate to check that out. We'll be providing the latest and greatest and more information as we get closer to the session. And I love the comment in the chat from Laura, because buddy in a virtual session can be helpful as well. They can field questions, they can type answers, they drive participation, they drive engagement. Well said, Laura. Could not have said that any better. Thank you so much for that. So, but the big thing I hope that you'll take away from today is more confidence. And you would not have been selected to present at COABE if you were not among the best and the brightest in our field. So we do not invite people to present who are not. So have that confidence going in, and realize that you're among friends. Adult educators are the best people in the world, and they will support you 100% as you give your presentation. Everyone wants to see you do well. Question about the coaching sessions. Will we get a confirmation about the time selection? If you go in, Carrie, to that doc and put your time in, yes, I will definitely send you a reminder in the day before to make sure. But if you go in and select a time, no one's going to take you out of that time. So you will get a confirmation. Yes. So one last thing that we'll ask you to do in the minute or two that we have remaining is, what's something that might help in your conference session? Just a quick couple of words, and a good starter for this would be something like, one thing I learned today is, boom. One thing that's going to help you with my session. I thought one of the, among the many valuable things shown was that one sentence that Sarah did in that activity. I think if we could really do that and focus on that and build our presentation back from that, that would really result in a great presentation. But thank you everyone who's talking about, Melissa mentions engagement, and Anna's talking about engagement as well. thank you for those. Oh, Leah is being courageous. All right. So if you're doing hybrid and maybe you haven't done that before, be courageous and you can certainly make it work and it will do well. And there is nothing to fear but fear itself. I think someone said that one time before. So let's go to the next slide, please. Diana's talking about planning more engagement. Carrie's looking at an engagement activity like a wakelet. Good. Let's see. Jennifer is thinking about narrowing her focus. Good, because sometimes we have too many things on the buffet that we put on our plate. Sometimes we need to modify how much we do. Let's see. Thank you, Mara, for your comment, and Emily as well. Yeah, 10 bullet points on a slide, Emily, is probably not our best practice for slide design. So anyway, thank you all so much for being part of our session, for your engagement, and a special thanks to Kim Glenn and to Sarah Goldammer for working along with us on this presentation. And we will look forward to seeing you in Dallas, if not before. But thank you all so much, and best wishes for a great presentation, which we know you will do. Thank you all.